Alright, welcome back. Today I'm going to go over punching leather, doing your stitching. First things first, I'm going to mark out where I want my stitching. Normally on wallets I go just shy of 1/4 of an inch, but I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch because I want to leave. You know what, I've already done my trim allowance, so scratch that and go just shy of 1/4 of an inch on this piece. You just simply mark that out with the wing dividers. And I'm going to do that on both sides. These lines don't necessarily have to touch, it's just a guide. But if it makes you feel better, you can make them touch. Got those marked out. I'm going to grab my stitching chisels, and you can use whatever stitching chisels you want. There's plenty out there. I also have a punch pad. There's a lot of fancy punch pads out there, but I don't have a fancy one. I grab my 2 stitching chisels and my maul. Now, if you have an overlay, say pockets or whatever, what I do is I will start with one tooth hanging over. And on this case, because I'm running past my line, I'm going to go 2 teeth hanging over, just so I don't run past that line. And then I'll start my marks. You don't want a tooth piercing the edge of that, because it'll mess it up. So you want to hang just off the edge. And the reason I'm doing this again is a lot of times if I try to stitch through something this thick, inevitably sometimes one of the stitches gets wonky. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to correct that. That's why I marked it on both sides, because if I'm perfectly aligned, all the stitching should be straight through. Make sure you're on your mark. You pound it through. I doubt it's all the way through yet. No, not quite. But things are looking good. Alright, all the way through the back. As you can see, I'm right in line with the line. And so I'm going to try to continue that at least halfway through, and I'm going to try a different technique on the other half. Another thing I don't like about stitching through thick leather, I don't know if you can see here, is on my stitching chisels in particular, there's like little chisels in between, and when it's really thick you can see those marks on the leather. Now that's going to be covered up by the thread, so it's not a huge deal. So I'm going to come here and stitch again. Just barely all the way through there, and that one's not completely perfect. I'll show you here in a second. Don't know if we can tell on here. That stitching line is ever so crooked, just barely crooked. It's, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much on the line, but this side is just left of the line, and this quarter here is just right of the line. So I'm talking about when stitching through thick leather, it's really hard to control which way it is. And on this side, I'm dead on that line, so it's wavered just a little bit on the inside. So I'm going to try a different approach over here. I'm going to start normal with 2 teeth over, and I don't know if this approach is going to work or not. We're just going to try it out. Actually, you know, just go 1 tooth over on this side. Just because everything's not completely symmetrical, it's just how this test piece is turned out. Okay, and that's not all the way through, but that's not what I'm going for. I want to try to go about halfway through. I'm going to try to stitch it from the back side of this. Now, these particular chisels, because they're French pricking irons, they have an angle to them. I think I've read that if I do the reverse, I would actually need reverse chisels, which I don't have, but for the sake of trying this to see if it works, I don't think it's going to matter. Alright, grab a needle real quick and see if that even worked. Hey, look at that. That worked. Now, you would have to make sure that everything is perfectly lined up. Is the next one lined up? Yeah, the next one's lined up. So that is definitely a viable option that I am willing to try a few more times to see how it works. Also, doing the reverse stitch on the back side might help with how the stitching lays on the back side. So yeah, all of those have run through just perfectly fine, and it's dead on the line on both sides. So that checks off 2 of my boxes. Let me finish punching these out, and we'll try something even different for apart from that. Let's see if I can line these up. Okay. See if those lined up properly or correctly. You can tell this is the side, I don't know if you can tell or not. This is the side where I just stitched all the way through from one side. You can tell that the holes on the back side are just really, really small. So for this side, it's the side I punched from both directions, and the holes look much better. And they so far are lined up. So I like that. I'm just going to take some very precise measurements and knowing where you're at. Looks like that might just slightly be at an angle, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. Yeah, that's just, well, that needle might be bent too. Yeah, that needle's bent, so I liking how that's looking so far. All right, so the next thing I'm going to try is something completely different. I have not glued these together yet. What I'm wanting to do is see whether or not I can punch 2 separate lines on 2 separate pieces and then get them lined up after I punch the holes. Because punching through 2 layers of leather is definitely going to be much easier than punching through 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever. So I'm going to come over here, align my stitching chisel. I'm going to punch all the way through. Over here, make sure everything's lined up. Sure they're the same. Make sure I'm on that line. Punch all the way through. All right, now I'm going to do this all the way around in hopes that, you can see this, everything's focusing on the background. Hoping that once I glue these pieces together, those stitching holes hopefully will be in line with each other. So far, are they? So far, we're a little bit off. So I'm going to have to play around with this to make sure that I line everything up correctly when I go to glue it. Which I think I could do by putting needles or something through it to align it and then gluing it up. I'll do one there and then one over here. So let me get that perimeter stitched up on both pieces. I think this might be a really good option. I just have never really tried it before. It's going to take some practice, and that's what we're doing today. See, and that was just 2 pieces of leather, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm just barely off because I wasn't on that line perfectly. So on the back side of that, that would have been extremely exaggerated, and I don't want that. I don't want it. So that's what we're doing. I'm practicing, trying to come up with a way. Man, if I've got to get my face down in here and look at it to make sure it's lined up perfectly, then that's what I'm going to have to do. Not trying to make excuses, but having a camera in between me and the piece does hinder it, but gotta make it work, right? Need to get some better lighting in here. Lighting is very, very important. So if y'all don't have good lighting, you need to get some. Okay, I've got those all punched out all the way around. Make sure that when I put them together, I can get some needles in either side. Make sure stuff's lined up. And I think they make specialty tools to do this. Like line up your holes. Actually, I don't know. My wife bought me some. I don't know what I did with them. I've never used them before. I imagine that once you get really good at doing this and lining your holes up completely. What was that? Remy was jumping up on the inside of my leg. So I've already run into a problem. That is not lined up correctly. I think what I'm going to do is, because these were just rough cuts and they're all wonky, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one out where it's perfect, as if it was the real deal. So everything's, there's no variables, there's no crooked lines or anything. I'm going to make one where it's completely worked all the way around and it's nice. And I'm going to try it from there because I think I've set myself up for failure even with practicing, except for that's a learning experience. I had done this just roughly to practice. I didn't care how it looked. But what's that saying? You know, perfect practice makes perfect. So if I would have practiced perfect 90-degree cuts and all of that, you know what? That might actually work. I think from here on out, for certain, I am going to make sure that everything, when I do practice stuff, that I try to do it as perfect as possible. This is honestly so far very tricky. Trying to line up all the holes. It's not really going to do what I thought it was going to do. Gluing these together after the fact, I don't know how that's going to work out. No, I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with this. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and make sure it's all perfect, and then we'll try this again. Because this seems to be a pain in the butt so far. And I think it's because I didn't mark everything out correctly. Yeah, if it's misaligned just a little bit, it's not gonna go through. And I'm gonna end up poking, ripping holes through the project instead of going through the holes. You can feel like a lot of times the stitching is tight, especially when you have thread in it, but you can tell when you are actually pushing against leather and not going through a hole that's already there. I think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm spinning my wheels here because none of this is lined up. I didn't go off of cut trim surfaces, and that has set me up for failure. So I'm going to remake these pieces, and we're going to try this again. These are crap. Okay, so I got these two new pieces made. Now I ran out of the 4-ounce leather, so all I had was 2 pieces of 5-ounce leather. So this is actually going to be thicker, more of a challenge, but I think I've got everything punched out correctly. Let's see if it lines up. Now, I've seen other leather makers on YouTube do this, and maybe it just takes a lot of practice, but so far, I'm not happy with the way it's coming together. Seems like it's going to be a very difficult option compared to everything else. So those holes lined up just perfectly. Let's see, what about these holes over here? See, unless you just, like I said, this might be a viable option, but you've got to have everything just perfect. Just perfect. I'm not hitting it. I need new glasses, I can't see. Yeah, I don't know that this is going to be a good option for me. I don't necessarily want to sit here hours and hours and hours and trying something that has proven to be difficult right off the bat, when the problem that I'm trying to solve may have already been solved with punching from both sides or something of that nature. Because I'm telling you, this is just a pain in the butt. Trying to get all this lined up where it should just be lined up right away. See, that's just not quite where it needs to be. I'm still going to give it a shot. I'll try to get this all lined up and give it a shot. I did normally with my wing dividers, I go 1/4 of an inch, or just shy of 1/4 of an inch. I went 1/4 of an inch to give myself some trim allowance. Yeah, I just don't think this, man, I've seen other makers do it before. It just takes a lot of practice. You do what you want to do, practice and see if it works for you. But it's being very difficult for me. I'm going to look for those other tools that my wife bought me to line up these holes, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, well, I've looked for about 15 minutes. My workstation here, while I'm on the road, is much smaller than the workstation I had back home. And because of that, I don't have everything on my workbench that I normally do. And because I've never used those alignment tools before. I can't find them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break out some other needles, but I'm going to go ahead and glue this up and see if this is going to work. I have a feeling that this might be more headache than it's worth, but I'm willing to give it a shot to see if I can make it work and see if it's a viable option. Yeah, I don't see this working. Which is very, very frustrating because I've seen other YouTubers do it. But maybe they've edited the video where they're not struggling with this so much. Yeah, no, that's just not going to work. Look, everything's all crooked, and I took my time trying to make sure that I had everything marked out and lined out perfectly. So I just don't think that this is going to work for me. I was really hopeful about this one. This was the one I was most hopeful about. It's one of those deals you never know until you try, right? I can only imagine lining all of this up while you've got glue on it is just going to be a pain in the rear. Yeah, this is just, needles are going all kinds of different directions. I don't think that this is a viable option for me. I'm inclined not to even glue it up. But for, I can tell that's not going to work properly for me. It's just not. So, I'm going to glue it up, and then if I have to restitch the holes, I will. It just will look like crap, and then we'll have multiple. No, I'm going to trash this. And on the next video, when we go to do our saddle stitch, I'll have something different worked up and ready for the saddle stitch. So I appreciate y'all checking the video out. Like I said, with this, I did my best to try to make sure my marks were the same, my stitching holes were in the same place, and this is just not lining up for me. I mean, they all look perfect. I took my time to make sure they were all lined up. So if y'all have used this method before and you know what I'm doing wrong, let me know, and I will revisit it. But for now, I think punching the holes through both sides, going halfway through, this is probably a better option for me at this point anyways. I appreciate y'all checking out the video. Stay tuned next week when we go over the saddle stitch.